Hopefully it'll be gone soon. All the lights here are flashing green, but nothing on Twitch yet. But yeah, I think yes, we are now live. Hello coders, and welcome to Thursday morning. It's 07:32 a.m. British summertime. Welcome to the How to Code Well Twitch morning streams. We're going to be continuing on where we left off yesterday, building a query builder, and this query builder is going to be a dynamic query builder that you feed in various properties, and then out pops the SQL that will be used to actually run the query. Notice I've mentioned that it's a query builder and not a query runner. I'll be talking about the differences between the two during this stream. Before I start though, I just want to welcome MA3YPOK Mapok for following. Sorry for mispronouncing that awesome Twitch username. Thank you very much for following, and also a Larry Chen 1 as well. I do appreciate that. So let's get into the code and let's start discussing what it is that we're going to be doing here. So let's go into the code over here. Okay, so I've actually been a little bit more organized this morning. I've actually created, first of all, what I did is I closed the branches that we were using yesterday, and then I created a specific branch for today's stream. I'll show you. If we went into the browser here, I've created this issue, create query builder, insert and update. And then I've got some notes here. This will build the MySQL query based on parameters and options. This should focus on insert and update, so I'm not going to worry about the whole selecting at this stage. If the ID is present, then the query will turn into an update rather than an insert. So we kind of had this running on the managers, within the managers. This is an example of the customer manager here. But as you can see, it is there's a lot of code duplication here. It's very messy. There's a lot that can get wrong. Plus, we have lots of mixed responsibilities. And yesterday, what I attempted to do was I did achieve. We built the invoice manager, the update here, which will update the invoice. However, there are optional fields, and this is where the extra complexity comes in. So for example, the invoice is related to the customer and the status. However, they can both be nullable to begin with. So I needed to have some way of distinguishing whether or not we should be adding a customer in, and so on and so forth. You may have remember up here we got into a bit of a mess where I started to create that out. I actually stopped doing this. If I remove all of this, because that doesn't really amount to anything, we actually started to build out a unit test to do just this. And if I went into the unit test, I'll just show you. So we're going to scroll down to the query. Is it query test? Query test. The dynamic test. The dynamic parameters are here. So we would define the parameters, and then we would create our SQL. So SQL is equal to insert into invoice. I'm going to just bung this up the top here just to make it a little bit more obvious as to what we're doing. So let's put it down here. So insert into invoice, and then we loop over the data that we have here. These are the fields, these are the values, and then it works out whether or not we need to put in a comma, a question mark, and so on, and that spits that out. Then we do a clever thing here to implode all of the data to get the backticks in the right place, and then we construct our SQL, and then this is the expected SQL from all of that mechanism. And then we have a test here that just asserts that that is the case. This actually is running. This is correct. If I was to dive into the container, let's see that one there. There we go. I might be able to run, there was a unit test, acceptance test. Nope, I have to find it. I'll have to hunt it down. Run unit. Did I put a group on here? Yeah, DB query. DB query. So if we run that, whoops, what's going on here? DB query. No, sorry, I needed to put a -G for the group. There we go. Okay, so that runs this test. It produces this SQL, this insert into invoice, and then all of these things here, and then all of that over there, based upon that. So what I'm thinking of doing is having a class, some sort of utility mechanism that will do this, and you supply in the parameters and the table name and some options and so on and so forth, and then out spits this this string here, and that string is dynamic depending on what the options and parameters that you've supplied. Now, if I go into the invoice manager like so, it would replace this here, and it would also replace this portion here. This is what you would give to that utility mechanism. But notice here that I was playing around with whether or not we have a status, and then we populate that, and it just got a little bit cray-cray. And then we then run the query. So let's just talk about the responsibilities here. I've called this, and I've done it on purpose, I've called this a query builder. I haven't called this a query runner, because if you see, we actually have a lot of responsibility going on in these classes in the save routine. This, in my opinion, is building the query. Okay, this is building the query. You get the SQL back based on these parameters. Down here, however, is running that query. Okay, this here, that's running the query. So you get the connection of the connection, the DB connection here. We open that up, then we prepare all the bits and pieces that we want to, and then we execute this. So in my opinion, there's two separate responsibilities going on. There's actually a lot more if you start getting quite granular with it, but the two main responsibilities are building the query and running the query. This is why I was able to build a unit test for this, because this isn't actually running the query, this is just building the query. And so what I'm doing is just checking the output here, checking the SQL is the same as that. So this little mechanism that we have here, I want to improve it. I want to put it in its own little class, its own little world, if you will, that I can call from these managers. And the beauty with doing it like this, because I've always known that I would like to do it like this, but the beauty of doing it now is that we now have a solid foundation of integration tests that test the managers. So if I was to scroll into entity, we have, is it entity? Is it, hang on a minute. It's not unit, is it? It's acceptance. Here we go. So we have DB customer entity. We've got a lot of tests going on here for testing out the saving and updating and inserting of customers. Same with invoice. Same with status. Here we go. So we've got something that will test that this refactoring process will work, and this is key. I want to make this point extremely clear. When you are refactoring a lot of work, you might know already exactly what you want to be doing, right? But unless you have tests to back up that the current thing already works, then you don't have a benchmark. Okay, you might be breaking something inadvertently by doing all of this restructuring and refactoring. This is something that is very important. So when I started doing this, I kept saying that we had a lot of duplicated code. There's a lot of code smell here. You know, this needs to be refactored, but I didn't want to refactor it until we got to a point where we had these tests in place, because all I'm doing on these tests, of course, is I'm creating the entity. I'm instantiating the status manager, and then I'm running save. This test masks the fact that we're actually doing any query building and any query running, Okay, so the mechanics within those routines are going to be manipulated, but this is the sort of overarching acceptance test, if you will, to say whether or not those changes are acceptable. So that is what we're going to be playing with. I've done a lot of talking. I haven't done a lot of drinking of tea this morning, so I'm just going to do that. Otherwise, my throat is going to fall apart. First cup of tea of the day. This is something special. Okay, dokie. Okay. So, excuse me, and I've got this horrible cold again. I think it's because I keep, late nights, early mornings, that kind of jazz. So let's have a look. What do we need to do? We need to, in the I've lost my trail of thought. In the unit tests, in the DB, in the query, we need to pull this out and this, and let's just make that a little bit more clearer. This to this is going to be in its own little routine. And I was thinking earlier as to how I should do this. Should it be an object that I instantiate? Maybe it's a query builder. So query builder is equal to new query builder, and I pass in some properties such as the table name and then the parameters and so on and so forth. And then there you go. Or should it be a static utility class? Should it be query builder : and then sort of insert to build the insert query, or an update to do the update query? I think my stance at the moment is to do it in a static way, because I think it becomes blatantly obvious very quickly when it doesn't need to be a static thing when you are doing it static. It's less obvious, I think, from me personally, that it should be a static query, a static class after you've created it as a dynamic class. So that's what I'm going to do. So first of all, what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to just double check that we are on issue number 55 of this project, and I'm going to just quickly check that out. So we're going to come out of the old container, the Docker container here, and we're just going to do a git. Well, first of all, let's see, what branch are we on? Branch. Okay, so let's do a git checkout of master. If I can spell it, checkout of master. I've gone and changed. Oh yeah, damn it! I've gone and altered those things. Those things didn't. Yeah, I don't think those change. Let's just go and double check. I don't think those changes affect anything. It's just me sort of like, tidying up. Can you see that green line there? It's just me tidying up the whole thing. I'm just gonna do a revert. I'm gonna do this directly from PHP Storm. So there we go. That's in. So let's just do a git checkout of master. There we go. I'm gonna do a git pull to get the updates of the previous issue I fixed and did a pull request on. Awesome. So let's do a git. Let's do a checkout. Check out -b, and this is going to be 55, and we're going to just call it query builder, not runner, builder. Okay, so we're now in that branch. And what we can start doing is we can start actually building this. So I'm going to just create a new class in here. We're going to call this query builder, like so. I'm just going to copy that for now. I will remove a lot of stuff, pretty much all of it, to be honest. I just wanted the basis of that. That is going to be called the query builder. We don't need to have the PDO. And what I'm thinking is that we would have a public function, and this would be called insert. And this would be a static function. And we would also have another one, and we would call this update. And we would also have another one, and this would be insert or update. Okay, because that will then that you can then run this as a single utility, which will choose, depending on whether or not you've passed in the ID, whether it's going to be an insert or an update. And then what we need to do as well, I'm just sort of stubbing these out, is decide upon the return. So the return here, is going to be a string. Whoa, come on. Like so. So string, and string. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make this a little bit more tidier. There we go. Okay, so we insert, we update, or we insert or update. Okay, that's kind of like what we want to achieve here. And we're going to be returning, we're going to put in SQL, and we're just going to do a blank string, and then we're just going to return the SQL. So this is kind of like the template, if you will. Okay, we've done too much code before we've done any tests. So let's just bring this back. Let's just rein this in a little bit. Let's build out some tests. I'm going to replace query test with query builder test. Like that. And this here is just going to be query builder. We're going to, I'm just going to put in, leave this as default, right? I'm just going to leave this as default because this is our control. If you were, if you're a scientist, this is the control. Because that's what we want to achieve. Now what we need to do is we need to create a public, how does this work? This test default. So this is test, insert. Obviously, this is a function. There we go. And then we do a public function. This is test update. And this is public function test. I think it was called insert or update. Insert or update. What I can do off the bat straight away is I can group these. So this is query builder, this is default. This is query builder insert. This is query builder update. And this is query builder insert or update. Okay. So that's kind of the goal for today's stream, is to try and build these things out in a manner that allows us to create basically this, right, but in a more dynamic manner using a query builder. So the first thing I need to do is on each of these, because I can kind of do these, because this is like a factory, like I've got a conveyor belt. All of these things are going to be returning strings. All of these things are going to be doing the same thing. So, you can do all of this work in parallel. When people say that testing is slow, if you're trying to, if you've got three things that are very similar, just test them together. There's no harm in that. So anyway, SQL is equal to, we're going to do that, and then we're going to do this, assert the same, and we're also going to have this is going to be expected, and this is going to be SQL, and we're going to do query builder, and this is going to be insert. Okay. And then we're going to copy that. Well, copy all of this. Paste this in here. This is going to be query builder update. And this is going to be query builder. Yeah, I think it was called insert or update. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so now we can actually start building out the mechanism. If I run this now, then of course we would just get a return string, and that would be exactly the correct, right? So I guess we could just do that just for giggles. So let's just run the whole DB builder thing. So I should really actually call this DB query builder just to finalize the namespaces a little bit, the whole domain. I like doing this with my groupings because it means that I can be very specific as to the individual tests that I run, because when you've got projects that have thousands and thousands of tests, and you're running them and there's one test out of 2,000 that break, you want to be, I mean, I know unit tests should take like less than a second to run anyway, but when you're trying to pinpoint a single test, it can be quite annoying when you're having to work that through, when you've got a whole noise of tests that are all passing and you're trying to focus on a single one. Anyway, I've mentioned what groupings are before in Codeception and PHP Storm. Okay, so let's just run this. Let's just go into the container here. So like so. And then let's just run, it was DB query, and I've just put in builder here. DB query builder. This will run all of the unit tests that we've just created, all three. And they're all coming back as true because they are just returning an empty string, okay? I think I've gone and screwed that up. That needs to be DB query builder. DB query builder, like so. Okay, awesome. So now we can start actually filling in the blanks, right? You know that blankety blank thing. Is it blankety blank? I forget. There's like a show where you've got to sort of fill in the blanks to make out this word. I forget what it is. Let's just run all of these tests because I did add that to another thing. There's 4. There we go. So that also tests our default control. This is what we're trying to control here. This is the outcome that we want to achieve. So in theory, I should therefore be able to take this is it? Yeah, sorry, from here, beg your pardon. And go all the way to that point there. We're going to cut this, and we're going to go straight into the builder. Up here, query builder. This is the insert test. Like that. So we've already defined what SQL is, because that is, I'm just going to put this up here. Okay, so we obviously need to have an array of data. Sure. We also need to have a table name as well, which is a string. Come on. Table. There we go. Cool. And then that returns this. So now we've got a dynamic table name. We can put that in here. So let's just concat that out. Like so. So that becomes our query. That is our query for inserting. It's now dynamic because we can pass in the data and we can pass in the table name. Let's just put in some comments up here, or the PHP doc. There we go. Let's go and test this out. So with query builder test, what we're doing here, in the insert, we need to, let's just grab that down here into here. This becomes, is this the expected string? There we go. That becomes our expected string. And then what we need to do is come up here, take that, put that here. That becomes our data, and our table name is obviously invoice. Okay. So let's remove this default for now because we no longer need it. And let's put in the data. Let's also put in the table name as well. So if I've done this correctly, and there's every chance that I haven't, because this is live and because I've only had one sip of my cup of tea this morning, this might fail. But in theory, it should be doing exactly the same thing as what we had in our control test earlier. But this allows us to do it in a more dynamic manner. So I've just removed that control here. I probably should have kept it, but let's just run this through again. We can run all of them, and yes, they have passed, including this one. And you can see it's taken up a little bit longer, like 4 little milliseconds, because it had to construct all of this stuff. And that's something that's worth noting, right? Because now we've made it a little bit more dynamic. We're actually doing a lot of things in terms of like looping and implodes, and this is where you can get really granular with, is this the fastest way to make that string? Is this the fastest way to get that string? That kind of thing. And then you're making micro changes, which have an effect across the board, and it's like this death by 1,000 cuts thing. If you've got a small little thing like this, but it's actually taking a couple of milliseconds to do, if you can get that down even further, then that's much better for the whole system. But again, as I mentioned before, have tests in place, because you don't want to be doing tweaks at this point and affecting everything else in your system without actually having any level of confidence that the change that you've made is actually going to help. Or won't break anything else. So that is that, which is pretty cool. And just to test out our theory, let's go back to the query builder. I'm going to do this a little bit more dynamic. Let's do test insert invoice like this. And so that tests the invoice. But what about something else? Let's just break this up a little bit. And I'm going to just call that -invoice. And this is where you can be really sort of granular. So test insert. I'm going to insert, test insert a customer. Why not? I mean, hey, it doesn't even need to actually make any sense. Then there doesn't need to be a table now that backs this up, because we're not running the queries. We're just building this string. This is all it's doing. In its rawest form, it's just string manipulation here. That's what's going on. So let's say that this is a customer, and let's say that this is a customer. This is first name. This is last name. And this is company name. Okay, because we've seen this all before. And we'll just remove all that stuff. So last name here is Peter. Sorry, that's not my last. My last name is Fisher. My first name is Peter. Come on, I know I haven't had enough tea this morning. And we're just going to call this How to Code Well for now. Okay, so now we're going to insert into customer. The table names are going to be first name, last name, or sorry, not the table names, the field names, I should say, and company name. We're not going to worry about any of this stuff because that's not required. And we're going to take a look. 1, 2, 3. There's 3 there, so we need to do 1, 2, 3 here, and we remove those 2, okay, because these need to correspond with the number of and order of these values, these fields that we put in. Okay, so in theory that should be okay as well. So let's just put customer down there. So in theory, fingers crossed, eh? So let's just run this. 4 tests, yep, that has gone through. So insert invoice and insert customer. They both ran okay. Strangely enough, this one took a little bit longer to run, whereas that one didn't take any time at all. But that's sort of like the way I like to test things. It's sort of like, but does it work if I change these values? That kind of thing. And I'm not saying that I'm an expert of testing at all. This is something that I'm trying to learn and progress in my own sort of, like everything I do. I'm a freelancer, so I've worked with an enormous amount of legacy code over the years. And one of the concerns that I had, or I have, and still have, is confidence. And it's like, do I have confidence in this code that I haven't written, that I'm just looking at now? If there's no unit tests, if there's no tests to say that these thousands and thousands of files of code don't work or whatever, then no, I don't. So I try and make I try and test as much as I possibly can do. And TDD is something that is fairly new to me as well. I mean, I guess new in the last sort of few years or so. And it's something that, again, I know that I'm probably not doing it in the right way, but I'm doing it, right? So that's and I know that, and it's helped. It's certainly helped. It does make development a little slower in the sense because you're having to test your code, but it makes the code more easier to work with. So it's slower to develop, but it's quicker to have confidence. And it's sort of short-term pain for long-term gain, because I'd rather find these bugs whilst I'm testing now in development than finding these bugs when they're out in production. And that's kind of a very different gear shift, mental shift, if you will, as to why I do all of this. I could have, if I wanted to, I could have just jumped on this stream and built all of these things out willy-nilly, and we would have got something running off the bat. But then in a year's time, someone might open up a GitHub issue saying that they can't do X, Y, Z. And I would be like having to try and remember why I did such a thing, and not having any unit tests will prevent me from having any kind of knowledge and confidence over that code. So I'm kind of like, what I'm doing now is I'm kind of like helping future me. That's what I kind of think when I do my TDDs. Okay, so that's the insert. I'm super stoked with that. That's come out really well. In fact, that's given me enough confidence to remove these managers here. So where we've got the managers, let's say the invoice manager, that whole process that I've just done here will replace this completely. There's no need to do that because we can just do build and then build that out, or insert. This was the thing that I reverted. I need to just remove that because that doesn't really make much sense here. It was just dead, dormant code anyway. Before I do, however, let's deal with the update. Let's just complete this whole thing full circle before I actually start hacking up these managers. I want to have a 100% confidence, or as much confidence as I can do, that these database queries will still run when I change the managers to using these query builders. So that's the insert. That is the insert. There we go. We also are going to do the update. Now, the update is very similar in the sense that all we're doing here is we're just copying that. We're putting this in here, like so. There's obviously a couple of things that we need to alter here, so we're just going to copy this as well. In fact, I tell you what we're going to do is let's build a control. I'm just going to revert all that change. Sorry. Insert. Whoa, too far. There we go. I think what I'm going to do is just build up our control, because there's no point in hacking that class up. And our control was this. If I was to have a look at the history, just bear with me a second. Let's go back to local history, show history. You can't see this on the stream, but PHP Storm has this amazing way of having a look at your history of the file to see, because it does automatic saving. So you can actually find previous changes. So if I went to what it was yesterday, I should be able to, yeah, here we go, test default, pull all of this out. So we're going to copy that. This becomes, let's make that out like this. Scroll down here. Oh, I'll put it up to the top here. There we go. So just paste that in. So that is what we had before. This was the default. We're just going to do default update. And we're going to use this as our control because I want to run the test and I don't want to be hacking up the actual classes that are in use. So we need to do an update. And the update that we're going to run is the update of the insert query, of the invoice manager. So the expected response is going to be this one. So I'm going to just copy that and then go into here. Back to that point. This is our expected. Too many. There we go. That is our expected thing. Okay. So notice that we're dealing with something slightly differently here. We've got equals and then question mark, equals and then question mark, equals and then question mark. We don't have the values like these things. So it's a slightly different mechanism. Okay, it's a slightly different format of this string that we're developing. So let's go and have a look and see what we need to do. So instead of insert into, we obviously need to do update. And instead of into, we just remove that. That becomes invoice, and then we can have set like so. Okay. Next thing we need to do is we need to go through each one of these things. Each one of these fields. So we don't actually have values here. Well, let's just put that as blank for now, because that's going to break. So we got set, that's set up there, and now we need to do references equal to. So this means that we don't necessarily need to have, let me think. Yeah, so the values were at the end. It's the fields here. So the fields, we imploded this and we split them out using a comma, which we still need, but we also need to have a comma, and we need to have a question mark, and we need to have an equal symbol. We also need to have a space, and we need to have that backtick, and we also need to have a backtick on that side as well. And then we can remove the brackets like this. And then that will produce that. Now, it's a little bit awkward to try and picture how this is actually going to output. And this is the beauty of running it in this unit test here, because what I can do is I can run the unit test and it'll give me an expected and the actual, and then I can compare the two like I did in the last stream. First of all, though, let's just have a little check. We've got reference, we've got total, and we've got VAT. So we need to reference total VAT. We don't need the status thing. We do have an ID, so that's something that we need to be cautious with, because this update has a where clause. But before we hack this up anymore, let's do db query builder, and this is default update. Let's just run that and see. This is obviously going to fail, but it's nice to see how it fails when you're developing it. So this is query builder, like this, builder, and it was default, and it was update. So this is going to fail, sure. Yeah, okay. But the best thing about this is, see these two things here. We can compare. So as we develop the string, we can then go, right, okay, this isn't lined up properly. This isn't lined up properly. You know, there's no need to have all of this stuff. What's going on with the end brace here? that kind of thing. And then we can slowly build this up and run these tests and so forth. So the first issue here is that we have an extra space going on down there. Can you see? So this is probably a problem with this space here and probably a problem with this space here. So let's remove that space. Okay, save this, run this again. Have I sorted that out? Yes. So invoice and then set reference. These are all coming up nicely. Okay, there needs to be a space going on here. What's going on with that? That's a bit peculiar, isn't it? That doesn't look right. Let's have a little look. So we have question mark and equals. That's strange. There appears to be an erroneous, a rogue space going on. So this is the expected one. Is it because I've gone and yes? See, that's that is not forming convention. There we go. Save that. Run this. Okay, that's looking slightly better, isn't it? So now we need to deal with this whole shebang. The ID here, it needs to be removed and put on the other side of the where clause. So let's remove that for now. Let's have ID is equal to 5. The actual values themselves don't matter in this case. So we should be able to run this now, and because we've taken the ID out, we should just go straight to the VAT. Strangely enough, we don't have the end equals sign and question mark, and I think that is because if I think about how this is constructed, we don't have the last one. Okay. All right, let me deal with the where clause first. So I'm going to just remove all of this. This needs to be where. This is going to be where. So let's spell that correctly. This is going to be where, and then this is going to be actually this needs to also be where clause. This is an array where the key is going to be the field name. So in this case, it's ID, and the value is obviously 5. So at this point, we can do where array key last, where, whoops, come on, where clause. Well, actually, thinking about it, thinking about that, we probably need to do this in a loop, to be honest, don't we? Because there could be more than one where, you know. So for each, here we go, where clause as key, and then value. And then where, I'm just going to have this as where SQL because that makes more sense to me. And that will be the key. So the key will be in these backticks. There's no need to put this in double quotes. There we go. And it's where that is then equal to a question mark. Okay. And if we have more than one, then we have an and all of this stuff. But we won't worry about that in this case because we're only worrying about updating one thing here. Okay, let's just copy this. I'm just keeping an eye on time here. This is cool. Let's just put that in there. So where SQL. I'm just going to run this and see what this looks like. Okay, so here we've got where, and then the ID is equal to that. Notice that this needs to also be removed. Wonderful, our string is slowly coming together. We obviously need to sort out this point here. What's going on there? This got an extra equal sign going on here. So let me have a look. Let's just have a look at all of this stuff. That looks good. That looks good. So there's obviously something in the mechanics going on here, which isn't quite right. So let me see. The implode, we're imploding that, we're returning that as a string, and this is the glue that goes between the two things. And then, so does this therefore mean that the last one isn't put in? Yes, it would, because the glue goes, yes, because there's less in between glue parts than there is parts. So in that case, therefore, it would be equals and then that, I think. Let me save that, run this and see. There we go. Apart from the extra space, which has been put in here, of course. Yeah, so do that. Yay. Okay, so what I could do is I could put in where here, and remove the where clause like that. All right. Just to make this a little bit more verbose. Yeah. Wonderful. That is exactly what we need. Now, this looks a bit sort of like, oh my God, this is a bit of a mess. But this is what, why I've got the tests in place. Wonderful. That's cool. I'm glad. I'm stoked. And that was only on 2 slurps of tea. I need to do better with my tea drinking. Because, excuse me, I need to get better with my swallowing as well. Because, at the end of the streams, I've always got this small little puddle in my cup of tea that is totally cold, and it's like the tea that never was. Okay, let's deal with this then. Let's grab that. This becomes our new test. So let's grab that, put this down into here. So this is the update. This becomes our expected. So immediately we've got a bunch of change here. We want to obviously put in the data, the table, but we also have where, like that. And the data in this instance is going to be all of this. The where is going to be all of that. So that's where. And the table, of course, is going to be the invoice table. Okay, so that's cool. I like that. So let's remove, or let's just copy all of this and put this in that query builder. But first of all, before we do that, I've just copied that to my clipboard. Let's just run all of these tests again. One of them is going to fail because I haven't filled out that whole thing, right? Because it just returns a blank string, and that's the update. So I like doing this because it kind of it makes me aware that there is actually a broken test that I do need to fix. So it's this update thing going on here. We're gonna put. Whoops, I didn't put it in my clipboard. Sorry. Let's go to, where are you? The test. Where's the test gone? Query builder test. It is up here, isn't it? So it's from the for each, from the where clause, all the way to here. And we go up to the query builder itself and we paste that in. Okay, so now we actually need to fill out the blanks, right? We need to put in the parameters. So the first parameter is an array of data. Second parameter is the table name, I believe. And that is a string. And the third parameter is the where, which is also an array. Okay, let's just tidy up some bits and pieces. So that's actually where. That we don't need to have that anymore. This becomes update invoice. That needs to be the table name, so we can copy that from here. Like this, obviously changing this to be update. Wonderful. And then let's see, that pretty much is it really. And then we return the SQL. So again, I'm just going to put in some PHP doc blocks here. And then in our query builder test, we are going to take a look at doing the similar thing, but in here in the update. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, let's save this. Let's run that again, and then hopefully. Oh no, we have an issue here. What's going on here? We have an extra that, and we don't have a set. So I obviously forgot to put that in onto the actual builder. Up here. Come on, where are you? Update table, and then this is set. Is that correct with a space? Let's run this and see. Yes, wonderful. Okay, so that's the update bit done. So we can also then, in the test, we can then remove our control because we no longer need that. Wonderful. So I'm pretty stoked with that. I'm pretty happy. I like the way this is going. We now have the ability to insert, and we now have the ability to update based on all of these things, which is pretty awesome. We obviously need to do the insert or update mechanism. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to have a chance to do that in this stream. So what I might do is I might just create a separate task, an issue, and then deal with that tomorrow, as well as updating all the managers to actually use this. Essentially what I want to do is on the invoice manager here, I'll just do a little bit of pseudocode, is let's say we have the data that's defined. So what I'm going to do is just put in a lot of space just to make a bit of room. So let's say we have a bunch of data that's been defined here. Essentially what I want to do is query builder, and then I want to do insert or update. I want to be putting in the data. I want to be putting in the table name, which is invoice in voice, and it will make the decision whether or not it is an insert or an update, depending on whether there is an ID. So we need to somehow put that mechanism in to make that decision work. But really, this, and of course the actual updating of the data, replaces all of this from there to there. Okay, that is pretty much what we're trying to achieve here, is the replacement of all of this stuff. All right, and then this becomes the SQL. and then the SQL that we've built from the query builder becomes what we put in here. And then obviously we pass in the data that we want to execute, which we've defined up here, and we've also given to the insert or update. This is more of a cleaner way, I think, of running these queries. There is a lot of responsibility going on here. There is a lot of ownership across the board. We're not only building the queries, but we're also dealing with whether or not it is an insert or an update, and we're also dealing with actually running the queries and, of course, updating the entities off the back of those things as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and there's also an enormous amount of code duplication, because this is the same mechanism that's in the customer manager, right? Can you see? The same thing in the customer manager, and the same thing in the status manager too. So if I can get to a stage where I've replaced all of these things with this query builder, then that is a very happy place to be in, I think. And it just shows that the whole refactoring process of this project. So yeah, I hope that people who've been watching these streams are actually getting things out of this. The whole decision process, the architecture of this sort of framework that we're building. If you've liked the video so far, please show your appreciation, give it a thumbs up, share it around, put some messages in the comments, and ask questions and stuff. If you're watching on the stream, then feel free to just ask questions as well. I'll be streaming again on this project again on tomorrow, Friday, around roughly the same time, about 7:30 British summer time. Thank you very much. Here comes another another Twitch username that I can't pronounce. It is Mutlak Al. I think I'm just going to give up. Thank you very much for the follow. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. One final thought about this project, just for anyone who's new here, right, is that this is a project that I'm building. It's an invoicing application, and this invoicing application is going to be using no frameworks and no libraries. It's just going to be raw object-oriented programming in PHP and MySQL. We're also using a Docker, obviously, right? There are libraries for PHP Unit and Codeception, sure. But apart from that, we're not using any framework. So it's not Symfony, it's not Laravel or anything like that. The reason being is that I was asked by FreeCodeCamp to develop a PHP object-oriented course. And an idea that I had was to actually build a course that actually showed you an example application. Now I've got on the How to Code Well YouTube channel, which these streams will be archived to eventually. They're not straight away. I do have a PHP OOP course for beginners, but that doesn't show you object-oriented programming from the perspective of actually building an application. So after I've built this, and we've already gone through several iterations of the view and the controller and the model layer, I'm now working on the integration between the database and PHP, hydrating the objects and so on and so forth. Once we've done that, we're going to be actually building HTML forms for the invoice itself and building that out. But once that project has been developed and done, I'm then going to basically pull it apart and teach it from an OOP. This course won't be on the streams, so these streams are only me developing this application for this course. This isn't the actual course itself. But I thought, hey, I could just build this off my own back. But wouldn't it be awesome to just show the actual development process, the thought process of a coder building a course such as this? Because I think both of those things are very different pieces of content. I don't see this as me teaching. I see this as me discussing and talking through the architectural issues, the testing issues, and all of that stuff. And then the course will be a little bit more refined, a little bit more polished, structured, and it would be edited, right? This is completely live and raw. There's been times, if you've watched these streams, where things have gone horribly wrong, and I've made horrible mistakes and so on and so forth. But the course won't be that. The course will be, this is polymorphism, this is encapsulation, this is how we do it when we're building, when we've got this invoicing application. So that's what we're doing. Anyway, that whole thing, the streams plus the course, when it's eventually done, will be on a website. And I've been building a website. I don't have it running at the moment because I'm still tinkering with it. But it's a website that I've built, and I'm fixing issues with using Gatsby.js. And we're using like GraphQL. I'm using GraphQL to pull back all of the live streams, the previous streams, and so on and so forth. I did preview it on a previous couple of streams, so if you want to have a look at it, go back and have a look at some of the previous streams. As I said, these are all archived eventually on YouTube. I'm a little bit behind on the How to Code Well YouTube channel, but the website itself is going to be hosted by Hostinger. And Hostinger is sponsoring these streams. Hostinger is a fantastic web hosting platform that you can use, and we're going to be hosting that on there. I'm actually going to be doing a video demonstrating the whole deployment process of a Gatsby.js site, that site, to Hostinger. And at the moment, they've got a fantastic deal. It's 82% off, plus a free domain if you use hostinger.com, Peter Fisher. And there's also a further 15% off if you use the discount code Peter Fisher as well. So thank you very much, Hostinger, for supporting the channel and How to Code Well. I do appreciate that. It is Thursday. This means that tomorrow is obviously Friday. Friday, we have a podcast on the show. It's a very interesting conversation between me and a Google Chrome developer relations fella, and that was an interesting conversation that will be published tomorrow. It's howtocodewell.fm for that podcast. So if you want to learn about what's coming on in Google Chrome and CSS and JavaScript and all that good stuff, the future of the web, all of these topics that I talked about with Adam, then do check that out. Okay, so I will message I'll send a tweet out on Twitter, How to Code Well Twitter handle, and also on the Instagrams as well when that is ready. But for now, I need to shoot off because I need to actually start my day. I am a freelance developer, and I've got a lot of work that I need to do today. So thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.